Have you ever desired to walk with power? I know many of us in our Christian experience, we usually have this experience with God where we're on fire for Him and we want to do everything that God has asked us to do. But then as we continue to live, as work occupies our lives and school, we get to a point where we just become stagnant. And I believe that there's a secret power that God wants to give to us. And I believe you can find that in the story when Peter walked on water. In Matthew chapter 14, we see that Peter is stuck in this situation. He's in the waves of life. He's looking around to try to find a solution to his problem. And I want you to notice in Matthew chapter 14, beginning at verse 22, it states that, and straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up to the mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, and it tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit, and they cried out of fear. As they're in the middle of this storm, they didn't realize that Jesus was walking on water. They were so focused on their waves and their situations and their problems that they forgot to focus on Christ. And this is where the story gets really interesting, because here it is that in verse 26, the disciples saw him walk on the sea. They were troubled. They cried out of fear. But verse 27 says, But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid. You see, at times when we are surrounded by the troubles of life, Christ wants us to remind us that be of good cheer. He is there in the middle of our storm. And he's speaking to the disciples. He tells them not to be afraid. And then Peter answered him and says, Lord, if thou be me to come unto thee, unto the water. Jesus doesn't give this sermon. He doesn't break down the 2300-day prophecy. He doesn't give them a Bible study. He simply utters one word. And Jesus tells Peter to come. Come. Take me at my word. And Peter had one or two options. He can continue to bicker, to complain about the ways of life, or he can take Christ at his word and to come. And so Peter opted to do what Jesus asked him to do. He told him to come. And I love Peter. Peter either strikes out, right, or he hits a home run. And here it is that Peter hits a home run. He takes Jesus at his word. He comes, and Peter was, in verse 29, it says, And when Peter came down out of the ship, he walked on water, and he walked to Jesus. Peter was ultimately doing something that was humanly impossible to do. He was doing the impossible. He was walking on water, all because he took Jesus at his word. Jesus says, do not focus on your trials. Do not focus on your situation. Do not look at your circumstances. Just come to me. All those who are heavy laden, if you have burdens, if you have stress, he simply asks you to come. And when we take Jesus at his word, we see that you and I can do the impossible. Peter walks on water, and I wish I could just leave the story there, but so many times in our life, in our experience, we lose focus as to what is important. In verse 30, it states that when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. The reason why he ended up in the same situation again is because he lost his focus on Christ. And there he is in the middle of his trials, his middle of his trouble, and he's there surrounded by the waves of life. And he simply asked Jesus, Lord, save me. I know I took you at your word. I came, but then I started focusing on everything else except for you. And I love Jesus' compassion. I love his grace. I love his mercy, because Jesus had every right for Peter to sink in his own, in the waters. He put himself in that situation, but I think these two words are the most powerful words in the whole story. In verse 31, Jesus states, and immediately. He didn't wait to tell Peter how he messed up. He didn't focus on the mistake he made, but immediately Jesus took Peter out of the water. But Jesus doesn't leave the story there. There he is in verse 30. He saw the wind boisterous. He cries out, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand. He caught him unto him. And Jesus simply asked the question, O thou of little faith, why did you doubt? Why? Why did you stop taking me at my word? Why did you stop spending time with me and through devotions and through prayer? Why did you start focusing on everything else except for me? Why did you demonstrate so little faith? But I love how the story concludes, because Jesus walks with Peter in the middle of the storm. It states that immediately Jesus stretched out his arm. He asked the question, verse 32, it says, and when they came into the ship, the wind ceased. And I can just imagine my sanctified imagination as Jesus asked Peter the question, why did you doubt me? Why did you doubt my word? And he's walking with him and talking with him. And Peter forgot that he was in the middle of a storm until he arrived to the ship of safety. And so many of us are going through situations in our life. We take God at his word in the beginning and we focus on him, but then all of a sudden life happens. And we start focusing on grades, we start focusing on school, we start focusing on our jobs and our careers, and we lose track and focus on the one thing that matters as Jesus. And we've fallen into sin. I know I have. But I'm so grateful for verse 31, because it says, and immediately Jesus helped Peter come out of that rut. And he's asking you the same question. Why would you doubt his word? If you want to experience power, if you want to do the impossible in your life, take Jesus at his word. He simply bids you to come. Test him, try him, know that he's good. And regardless of your situation in your life, Jesus says, come, and he will help you and walk with you in the middle of your storm. Do you want to experience power? I know I want to experience power. Let's take Jesus at his word. Let's go to him. Let's come to him just as we are. And with our stresses, with our trials, with our perplexities of life, and let's give it to him. And he never promised that he will remove us from those storms. But we see that he says that he will walk with us through those storms. So I hope that you experience that power. And today, I hope it is my prayer, and it is your prayer, that we can take Jesus for what he says, and we can experience that power in our lives every single day.